Hello, welcome to PODnas. This is a sports show with some Southern and Cajun flair. Today, we're going to talk about the LSU transfer portal for men and women's hoops. Grambling head coach Mickey Joseph has some thoughts on NIL and also the transfer portal. And hey, national championship game, men's college hoops, Houston and Florida going on tonight. We're going to go into that and Duke's epic collapse, which was amazing. I'm Daniel Hawks. That's Jarrett Roser. What's up, man?
Not too much, man. Just, it's Monday afternoon, obviously getting excited for this college basketball game tonight. I texted some folks on Saturday and said, best case scenario out of this Final Four is Houston beats one of the SEC teams, preferably Florida, probably. Worst case scenario is Duke. And so to watch Saturday unfold the way it did and know that there's a chance for this Houston team with some notable Louisiana representation on it has a chance to go win a natty. It's, best case scenario right now. Hopefully,
rolling. So who are the Louisiana kids on the Houston team? Can you just give them a shout out for listeners?
Viewers? So the main guy that folks around the state will know and remember is Malik Wilson, the kind of sixth man guard a lot of this season for the Cougars, who's a former Rayville star who started his college career out in Lafayette with the Cajuns before then at Texas Tech and now at Houston, finishing up with Kelvin Sampson. Joseph Tugler is a guy that's from Monroe, didn't play his prep ball in Louisiana, but actually, in kind of a little fun fact tangent, his older sisters, twins Alexer and Elexer, who played at Carroll High, won a state championship, I believe, with Carroll High in like one of the first girls basketball state championships that I covered when I was still at LSU. And then they went on and played at ULM, but the family moved to the Houston area before Joseph got to high school. And so he was a great prep player out there in Houston, but is a Monroe native. And then Javier Francis, the big man who is a New Orleans native, but largely grew up in Houston as well. And then got to shout out the St. Aug reps on that staff too, with Quantus White, who will be the Cajuns head coach moving forward, and Hollis Price, former star who went on to play at Oklahoma and whatnot. So a lot there, certainly for the Cougs.
Yeah, and also he's not on the Cougars, but shout out to Donald Reyes, who joined the Cajun staff as well. So go ahead.
There you go.
Yeah, look at that. So actually, let's just get into this game real quick since we're here before we go there. I think two of the three best teams got there. Obviously, these were all 4 seeds, but I thought of the way that obviously Duke had been playing. You thought that they were number one, and then Houston and Duke and Florida, I think, were the 2 best teams coming into this tournament. Houston right behind them, and then Auburn had kind of struggled coming into the tournament, but looked like they maybe got their footing a little bit back. But Florida, both great games. It was so good to watch, like, because all of the college football playoff games were such blowouts. It just felt good to watch this college sport, this huge, big thing, living up to the hype. Even though it kind of felt like Duke controlled the entire game except for the last 8 minutes. So
yeah, what a time. I think some of what we see there too, it speaks to something we were talking about going into the Final Four, where as much as it's fun to celebrate some of the early round upsets, I think by the time you get to certainly the Final Four and probably the Elite Eight, that you want to see some of the best teams in the country give you some of the best basketball you can ask for at this time of year. Yeah. And we got a lot of that on Saturday night. And certainly, both Florida and Houston closing the games really, really strong, impressive fashion.
Houston, it was weird. It was like they closed, obviously they closed the game, but there's that weird slap the out of bounders ball and get a technical,
dude. And so that was was Tugler, who, like, probably until now you didn't realize is a Louisiana kid.
Yeah.
And as that happened, I'm just thinking, oh no, man, don't.
Dude,
you've been phenomenal all season. He's been such a great player for them all season long, and was great again that night. And it was just such a bonehead move, which, he was in that moment trying to be aggressive, not as aware of that line as what he needed to be. Saw the ball kind of jerk one way and move that left hand out, and it was about to be super costly, but it just didn't slow him down, man. The resolve of that Kelvin Sampson coach team was so impressive. I really thought prior to that, the sequence where Houston had tried to to make the run, and then Cooper Flagg hits the 3, and then
They
on
got
the other
up.
end,
It was like almost double digits or right at double digits again. It was like,
they went up. Yeah, I think that pushed it to 11 or 14 or whatever it was. And then on the other end, he blocks a shot and then lets loose his roar like it's, bingo night at the retirement home. And I'm like, man, this game is over. They're about to cruise to the finish. And just Houston kept on coming, had the moment that you talk about with Tugler and the technical foul on the inbound play. And I thought that was going to prove costly, and they just did not go away. And it was incredible, as I told you in the group text with a couple of Duke fans on Saturday night.
Yeah. I told you before this too. I literally air guitared and did this.
At the bar for folks
at the bar.
Yeah.
Yes. I stopped working. I stopped serving people and hit the air guitar celebration.
That's why
I was talking to one Duke fan too.
Folks that maybe thought you have that thimble because you've been sewing like a Houston Cougars championship. That's actually for the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a slide.
You're really committed to that bit.
Oh, all right. We'll move on. So while there's a lot of bet happening on the national stage for basketball, LSU men and women's hoop both have some news coming in about the transfer portal. Jarrett, why don't you go over that with us?
Yeah, since we last talked, a couple more additions for the men's team. Max McKinnon, a versatile scorer and playmaker for Portland this past year. Out there in the West Coast Conference in a league that has Gonzaga and St. Mary's and company, so good competition. He was an all-conference selection and shot 41% from 3, and so he committed he committed on Thursday night. I think is also signed, and everything is official now to the men's team. Really nice addition for them to get that perimeter scoring into this class. Then on Sunday morning, I believe it was Marquel Sutton, a versatile forward who was great for this Omaha team that gave St. John's a little bit of a run for about a half there to open up the NCAA tournament. He joined this LSU class. And so the men's team now with 5 additions and really kind of the picture starting to come together for those guys. And then the women added Kate Koval and all freshman, all ACC selection for Notre Dame this past year. Big 6'5" player for the Fighting Irish is now going to be joining Kim Mulkey and company. That became official today. I think I don't remember if it was morning or afternoon already, but Monday, not long before we hopped on here to record this. And so some really nice additions for both LSU programs.
How tall is Betts? Because I realized I actually
she's tall.
watched that Final Four game with our lawyer Brooks. He came into the bar, and it was so noticeable the women's size. And I know Betts is obviously she's like almost is she Brittany Griner's still taller, right? I believe. I think
now I got to look up both heights because I just looked up Lauren Betts' height and it is listed at 6'7". And Brittany Griner 6'9". That stood out a ton in that game, though. You're right, and that's something that I think going into this transfer portal season or window for Mulkey and company was one of the focal points, was to get a little bit bigger in the post because they were a little bit undersized. And I thought Samaya Smith and company did a nice job overall. It was kind of ups and downs, as it's going to be when you have a player as big and as talented as Betts was in that moment. But there's only so much you can do when you can get the kind of position in that Betts was able to do a lot of the night.
I really, really thought that also that LSU women's team didn't take advantage when she was off the floor. UCLA was extending that lead while she was off the floor. And if anything, it's like, just like if Joker gets a break in the NBA, like you got to take advantage of it. Like you have to. And they just didn't do that. And it's a hard game because that UCLA team is very good. It's why they are very, very good. But it's just something that I noticed going in. They just couldn't get anything done, and they really couldn't. It was frustrating to watch as a fan. I cannot imagine being out on that court and that frustration like actually playing out. So
yeah, 100%. There was a point where Betts, and we're obviously now rehashing like a week and a half ago, but Betts got into foul trouble, went to the sideline, and you're thinking, okay, time for a run, and instead UCLA won those minutes. For a variety of reasons, but
That coming
Yeah,
back to, I think someone in the 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", right? You need that bigness, that length,
that bigness.
yeah, that bigness. um, yeah, you need that down low presence in the Angel Reese style, someone that can at least control or get control of the boards or give you a chance down there. I think that's so imperative in the women's game and in basketball.
Yeah. And look, I said that was a focal point for Mulkey and company in the women's transfer portal. And so you see early on in their offseason process, them addressing that with Koval, who I hope I'm accenting her last name appropriately, but it's Koval. And that right now, as much as we like the early makings of this men's transfer portal edition, I think particularly now Damian Collins has put his name in the transfer portal again. And we saw early on Corey Chess was one of the guys that was looking like he was headed on his way out as he entered the transfer portal. I think another big on the men's side would really be pretty helpful because what we've seen so far is obviously DJ Thomas, the point guard, some wing scoring. Marquel Sutton has some size, some athleticism to him. I think excelling as much as anything as a finisher at the rim for Omaha, but now you're coming to the SEC. It's a little bit of a different look, and you also want some options in the post. And Nwoko is a guy that we like as a rebounder in stretches. He was efficient in his minutes for Mississippi State, but still only played like 15, 16 minutes a game for those guys. Blocked some shots, but not a ton, wasn't a go-to scorer by any stretch of the imagination. And so I think if you can add another piece to that kind of rotation down low, that is now to me something I'd really like to see for this LSU men's push as well.
I mean, yeah, I think I would just like to see more than 3 wins. That would in the conference. That would make me very happy. So whatever we can do as a university to support the men's team getting that, I'm down for.
I don't know if that's you saying, look, throw a bunch of small guys out there, run around, shock some people and get 4 wins, or if that's you talking to the fans and saying, get the money out there, go support McMahon and drop the bag on another big man.
It's both. It is actually both. If we're gonna small ball, let's run a 7-second small ball offense. I would love to see that. A Warrior style. Let's jack up a bunch of threes, and it would probably be really fun to watch. But you're not gonna win like that when you got to go against players like Broom that are coming out of Auburn or whatever, or something like this year. You're gonna need to be able to throw some size at them. And I know Louisiana got the money. Curse Charmy. Let's go. Come on. Pony up. That's my take. I can't. I'm broke. But y'all should. It would be so much when basketball's good in Louisiana, it's so much fun to watch. And when the PMAC is when the PMAC is rocking, it is such a cool environment. It is so cool. I remember going in there when it was the John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Kentucky team.
Yeah.
And LSU was good. LSU was I'm forgetting who's on that team, but LSU was certain they were, I think, flirting with the top 25, maybe not always in there, but they were a competitive team. And the PMAC was packed. You couldn't hear anything. It's one of the best environments in college basketball when it's right. And I want to see that come back desperately.
That reminds me too, because I was gonna forget this. I told you that there was one of the offseason hires for the LSU men's program was going to be a name that you would probably remember fondly and be familiar with. But Ronald Dupree from those early 2000s teams is now back as a part of McMahon's staff. He's been working up there in a place that we traveled to together up in Milwaukee with the Bucks. And now he's coming back to be a part of his alma mater staff.
Oh man, that made me happy. I'm glad we saved that for a surprise. He was one of my favorite players growing up. Oh, yeah. I loved watching him play. That was great.
Whenever LSU tweeted earlier from their official account, just, more about the new hire, Ronald Dupree, I just kind of quote tweeted and said the young bloods are about to get a little bit of a history lesson because this dude was all SEC like clockwork every year, pretty much.
It was great. It was great. Well, welcome to the staff. I hope that brings dividends in, which I think, think it will. So next up, our last topic of the day, Mickey Joseph, the Grambling head coach, had some interesting things to say. We'll play the clip right now.
And we understand. I think the kids understand if they're here. And if they're sophomores and they have a big year and a group of 5 or a power 5 approach them and they have the finances to pull them out of there, and I can't match the finances, then you know what, they're going to go. That's part of it. Coach has been doing it for years. So we shouldn't get mad as coaches when these kids make decisions to take care of their family. Because like I said, I'm going to say it again, coach has been doing it for years. But I also think there need to be a buyout. If they move up from me and go to group of 5 and power 5, I should get kind of a compensation for that, So NCAA, if you're listening to me, I need a buyout.
All right. So Mickey Joseph, I kind of agree. I just think I need contracts. They need, there needs to be, and not that you can't leave. Don't want you to not to be able to leave, but I think there has to be accountability both ways. Because it's swung there just a little bit of structure within this. Because if not, it just becomes, like you said, we're in like a Wild West type. We've talked about this before. I think this does bring a little structure. I'm not necessarily saying a buyout, but especially if Ohio State plucks a kid from Grambling, like Ohio State has the money. I think they should compensate for that. Yeah, if you can find $10 million to give to Bryce Underwood, and maybe Bryce had, let's say, committed to Southern instead of LSU, just in this world, like, yeah, that was probably going to make Southern so much money for the next 3 years or 2 years or whatever, or at least 1 year if he would have played 1 year there. That you should compensate for stealing that. Now, it happens all the time in professional sports, so yeah.
He's spot on, in my opinion, on all of this. I think the beginning part of it where he talks about this is kind of the nature of the game. Guys are going to leave the same way coaches have. That's kind of, at this point, the baseline. That if you're not on board with that, then you probably don't really have a place in college sports at this point. But the buyout piece was something I hadn't thought as much about in terms of how the logistics get. And I think partially because we still have steps to go before you get to wrinkling out that level of detail, and the contract piece has to be in play. You have to have some better level of regulation of who's going where, and on what timelines and things like that. But the buyout piece makes all the sense in the world. And I saw some people kind of backlash a little bit because I think they kind of misunderstood him, because he was talking about, when he's saying I or me or whatever, using first person, he was talking about the program, that if someone leaves Grambling, that they're, he's not talking about I'm going to have to pay this, or they're going to have to pay me, Mickey Joseph, this. They're talking about from a program standpoint.
People are dumb.
and so, like, for anyone that kind of snapped back at that a little bit, he's talking about a setup that is essentially the same as college coaches, where if you want to go get a coach who's still under contract, you pony up and pay the buyout as part of that process to get that guy on board, or any other business. I mean, we have,
the NFL, like, Daniel Jones got bought out of his contract.
I mean, there are non-sports contracts that have buyouts to go get executives. That's normal. That shouldn't have been as controversial a take as Twitter seemed to feel like it was.
But I mean, between that, or even like if you go from one radio station to another, or one media thing to another, you literally you cannot be on. Zach Lowe got let go from ESPN, and literally you can't be on another platform for depending on what your contract is. It could be 3 months, could be 6 months, it could be a year. Yeah, and if that is your whole job, like that's the cost of their buyout. This happens all the time. I don't understand why people were up in arms about it. Actually, I do. People are idiots.
And the thing that I love most about it, you gave an example of, let's say Bryce Underwood had started at Southern, and then Ohio State or Michigan or whoever comes in and buys his contract out. And so then there's some money going back to that smaller program. I think that wrinkle is so huge to me, based on what we were talking about, a week ago, with how are some of these smaller budget programs going to be able to keep up in this modern world. And that certainly helps quite a bit. If you can be a smaller program that is able to identify that talent coming out of high school and then pays some dividends off of that, because when the program, the big, the blue blood program comes and takes your guy to the transfer portal, there is a buyout in play. And so then you have more money to help fund your athletics department and be able to continue doing what you're doing in terms of identifying some of these student athletes out of high school. I think that is not going to solve all of those disparity issues, but it's certainly a step in the right direction from a financial standpoint.
And also, I think just having a contract or anything like that, and getting these colleges all this stuff in writing for the players. Like, no, you said this. You said this, you signed it, you got it notarized, whatever you need to do to make this official. You made this official. So, like, yeah, I will play here if you give what is expected, or that you said you were going to give. It just needs to, like we've talked about before, moving out of professionalism, or moving out of amateurism and into more of a professionalism look of this, because that's what it is. And it is a business, and it is entertainment. There's literally so much money backing it. Perfect example I just thought of this was actually, and this is my nightmare scenario, this may be the only thing against it in my eyes, is Cam Ward coming from Incarnate Word to Miami. Like, Miami, there maybe should have been a buyout, so Incarnate Word gets more money and gets their name out. They're so stupid. But that we are given these hypotheticals. I mean, Cam Ward obviously got a lot from Miami this year, but Incarnate Word could have had him for another year or whatever.
I had completely forgotten about your ongoing beef with the naming of Incarnate Word, because I didn't know that it was ever going to come up again. But here we are.
It's draft season, baby. Okay. It is draft season. We only got a couple weeks left. I'm losing my mind right now.
But and look, you're going to have to, as we get to a point where this becomes real and you're looking at contracts and buyouts, obviously that means that actual agents are going to have to be involved earlier in this process. And then I think there's an opportunity to, I think as much as folks are used to in the college level, looking at it of you have to be here X number of years or whatever if you're going to go play college baseball, it's going to be 3 seasons, or if you're going to the NBA, it's 1 season, just a uniform number. But at this point, I think you're going to be looking at negotiations of, is my contract with this FCS program 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How does the buyout change in that regard? If I stay longer, does that buyout become smaller to where
player options, team options? Like,
I think there's a likelihood that all of that becomes involved. And so, fortunately or unfortunately, you're probably going to need more agents and lawyers in the mix, but also it becomes a far more manageable and sustainable format for everyone involved on both sides of it. You'll just need some of those third-party individuals to come in and help massage some of the contract details.
Go. We just fixed it. We fixed everything. How about that? Look at, who would have thought 2 white guys on a podcast would fix everything?
I tell you who would have thought. Every white guy with a podcast thinks, just as deluded as we are in this moment, to think, we've got it all figured out. Let's hop on a couple of mics and just do the damn thing.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. We're the part of the problem is basically what I'm saying. And you can follow all parts of the problem on the PODnas Instagram. It's PODnas_LA. We're definitely going to have some social stuff from here up on there. Great episode today. Thanks, Jarrett. I appreciate the time. Who do you got tonight?
Tuning in,
Florida or Houston?
Tuning into this episode of Idiots with Mics. I'm going with Houston, man. I think both of these teams, which is really exciting for me, have finished games incredibly strongly. I mean, you've watched them have to overcome some scares along the way. And so how this thing wraps up down the stretch feels like it could be wild.
I do wonder if the team that gets out in front or like has like the lead, if they're going to be like, whoa, we don't know what to do here. Yeah. I'm not sure. What do we do when we have the lead? We're supposed to come from behind and win.
But I'm sticking with Houston. Florida, again, was my champion going into the bracket because I looked at Florida and Duke essentially and thought most people were going to pick Duke. And so I zagged with Florida and liked the way that they were playing at that point. But I think Houston has just continued to prove that their ability to kind of muck things up and play recent years worth of Houston Cougars basketball, but also be able to score a little bit more consistently than what we had seen in some recent years. I've been really impressed and think, maybe it's Kellen's time. Maybe that's just wishful thinking for the Louisiana guys we mentioned before, but I'm going Houston in head and heart tonight.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Florida. I think we're going to, I think the Gators are, just a little bit more efficient offensively. And so I think that's
Walter
that's
Clayton's
come through,
a maniac. That dude is so good.
Yes. So we'll see. We'll come back next episode. Someone will get to rub it in your face. And if you followed this show before, it's probably going to be Jarrett to me. So I am on a Charles Barkley-esque streak of not choosing things correctly on this show. So please, like you said, follow us on PODnas _ at Instagram, PODnas _ LA on Instagram. You can also do LA versus all y'all on Twitter and Instagram as well. And follow the Louisiana versus all y'all YouTube page to catch up on non-idiots with mics. Jarrett does a great job with all stuff, Louisiana recruiting, Louisiana sports. Check it out on there. And then if you want to get silly, you can come watch us. So you got anything else for the people?
No, that's it, man.
That's it. PODnas out.